to your point earlier, like what can you really do to add value to a condo? Just sit on your hands and wait for time to pass? We bought it for about $1 million and it's been appraised at $4.3 million once complete.
Perfect. And if somebody were to do this from scratch, what's the cash involved?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I get it. The Toronto real estate market is confusing. Whether you're a new or experienced investor or just looking for a home to raise your family in, join us at Broadview Table Talks as we sit around the table with my friends and talk about the real estate and the ever-changing market in Toronto. So I have a question. When you think of investing in real estate, what do you think of naturally? Like if you ever had to buy a piece of property right now.
Yeah, I was thinking just buy a little studio unit, a little 1-bedroom, and that's it.
Resale? Pre-construction?
Pre-sale, or resale, or pre-construction.
Because it's so easy to buy these things, right? Like all you have to do is just put your deposit down, 5%.
Yeah.
And then you scale it up over the next 2 to 4 years, to say, right?
Exactly that. I want to like just keep it like a simple process. But also, I'm not really aware of any other way to do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. That is the easy way to invest into real estate. But what if I could tell you there's another way to do it?
Talking about REITs?
Well, yeah, you could do that too. There's multiple ways. You could do fix and flip, you could do BRRRRs, you could do like invest in passive funds, REITs and all that kind of stuff. But this way, you're actually owning real estate. And because the city needs more housing, they're densifying housing by adding more units to existing lots. We're talking about small multiplexes. The difference of this is that now you're qualifying for commercial financing, not residential financing, which is a big, big difference because there's new programs out there from CMHC that give you that access to be able to get favorable financing terms. So let's explore that. Basically, in order to qualify for commercial financing, you need 5 units or more, right? So that's what we're going to explore right now. We're going to explore an existing residential lot, just a regular house, that they turn into a commercial property. That's the essence of what we're looking at today.
Nice. So we're just looking at the lot?
Kind of. The place we're going to is 85% complete. They're in process of construction now, but they've got all the steps in place. And I'm going to meet with my buddy Jayden over there, and he's going to take us through A to Z and how he is doing this project.
Yeah, thanks, dude. It's humming along, man.
Yeah, it looks good. Looks good. Guys, everyone, this is the 4+1 tour that we're talking about. I'm here with Jayden Haywood. Tell us a little bit about this project, how you got into it, and a bit of your background.
Yeah, sure. Start with my background. So I've been in the energy space for about 15 years. Started out doing energy modeling and high performance new construction for like Tridel, Brookfield, Minto properties. So my background is working with high-rise multifamily developers across the country. So started a group of energy companies. We focused predominantly on new construction and then retrofitting. Going in, taking out old inefficient heating and air conditioning solutions, lighting systems, and putting in high efficiency stuff, getting government rebates and incentives. So like at my core, I'm a government rebate and incentive guy focused on energy efficiency. So I did that for about 15 years. COVID is actually the main reason that we're here today, which is a funny story, but operating in Toronto and in Canada, we weren't able to go into any of the buildings anymore, right? So my partner and I started, conceptualizing this idea of like, well, what if we can kind of buy single family homes, convert them to multifamily and build them with energy efficiency in the forefront, right? So this is kind of like before EHON and some of like the policy changes. So originally we were just going to do Laneway Suites and garden suites. And on a very like high macro level, I thought, okay, and like I own some of my own real estate in this neighborhood. I'm like, if I could build a Laneway Suite or a garden suite for like $400,000 and I could get like $40,000 a year in rent, what a great return on money. Like your cash on cash return is
More than 10%.
Before you even roll it into a mortgage, you're getting like 10% return on your money or more than 10% in Toronto real estate. So that was kind of my first light bulb that went off. And I said, okay, there's something here. These policy changes and this government push to increase density is going to create a lot of opportunity if the timing is right and if you're able to deliver a really, really good product. So that's kind of the background story. That's my elevator pitch.
All right, so let's start with, you said EHON, so that basically stands for Expanding Housing Options for Neighborhoods, which the City of Toronto created lane suites and garden suites, and they put it under an umbrella of that first, right? Because they realized that instead of building new, because there's nowhere really to build new, there's no land, they're going to intensify the sites that already exist, the yellow belts that already exist, the traditional single family homes. You can make it dual, triple, 4-family homes, plus now a garden suite. So that's what you're talking about, just the EHON.
Yeah, well, it's, Ken, it was the crux of our business model, right? Like our entire business model was trying to add gentle density without having to go to committee of adjustments, without having to seek this long permit process that's typical in major cities, certainly Toronto, and not have to have, neighbors' permission.
Yeah,
Right, 'cause,
that's
like-
the silliest thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, I
Not
mean,
being
like,
able to build because your neighbors say, no, I don't want.
and you'll read these stories all the time. You'll read how neighbors will stifle a project, or neighbors will completely stop a project because they oppose it for whatever reasons, right? Like, so our entire business model is based on these new government policies and changes in planning.
All right. So, yeah, no committee. So, committee of adjustments is what we're talking about, where you typically have to ask for permission to get more density into your lots. And now you don't have to go through that with the new EHON rules. You can get as of right zoning to do 4 units, 5 units even.
So I always think about, when you're talking about real estate, time is always a factor, right? There's like, what are the returns by virtue of the time? Like, what's the investment timeline? So if you are able to, in theory, buy a single family home and convert it to a multifamily in a shortened time horizon, there's a huge opportunity there, because historically that just hasn't been the case.
In Toronto.
In Toronto.
Right. Because Boston and places like that, everywhere you go, you see 4-story walk-ups, right? Everywhere.
Yeah.
Why don't we have that here?
Yeah, well, it's a good point, yeah. I don't know the answer to that. But
Bureaucracy, for sure. That's the answer.
Yeah.
There's too many voices.
I'll tell you my background. This is my limited experience with development. It was investing in pre-con condos, right? Like in 2014, 2015, somebody dropped a brochure on my, and I'm like, oh wow, this looks incredible, right? Like, who are these guys? But it was like a 4 or 5 year time horizon, right? Like, you kind of like bought these pre-cons and you forgot about them, and it was this, look, there was a lot of money to be made because, the impact of time had such a huge result in the outcome of your investment, right? And that tap kind of turned off, in my opinion, in 2017, 2018, when prices started going up, right? So the wheels in my head were spinning, and I was just kind of envisioning a world where, you could buy something and you could be permitted, you could start construction within like a 6 to 7 month timeline, and then you could have a finished product like this within a 2 year window. So I think that is very, very important to highlight.
Yeah, that's actually how I got started my real estate investing career a long time ago. And the reason why it worked out is because we had 2 decades of cheap interest rates. So no matter what you bought, it would have went up. And during the time when I bought pre-construction condos, you'd wait 4 or 5 years, put a little bit of money down, partial deposit, and it would grow because all the values went up, right? So I'd always compare that to some renovations projects where I was doing during the same time, and the returns and the amount of work you put into it didn't really work out to what a large scale development would do, like a Tridel or whatever that you bought, right? So back then it was great, but now there's options, and now it's not working so much anymore because the cost of everything, cost of construction, cost of land, cost of permits, cost of zoning, taxes, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Cost of money, there you go. That's
Cost
a huge
of
one.
money.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So this is another alternative, which I think is the key way to win in Toronto right now. For small scale developments, I think it's the only way to win.
Yeah, and I think it's important to highlight too, the product got worse. I think the product that they were building in 2013 and 14 in pre-con are significantly
the quality.
different. Yeah, right.
Well, the sizes too, right? Because the
sizes.
cost of land and everything was expensive, right? And I'm not saying it doesn't work. Like there's good things about it. First of all, like you can trade easier. There's smaller price points, so you could trade them easier. But just there's no value add you can add to it.
That was what I was going to talk about next, like forcing appreciation.
You can't do that in condos because essentially
What do you do? You
4
just sit
walls.
on your hands. You just sit on your hands.
Well, you
right?
can renovate the inside maybe, but like that's not going to add much value. This, on the other hand,
And you wouldn't on a new construction. And
why
a new
would
build.
you?
The first thing you do is not going to show up with a tool belt and start ripping walls out of your pre-con, your 700 square foot pre-con condo, right? So it
700.
It's like, how do I force appreciation? If the only value that I'm going to bring to my investment is just sitting on it for a long period of time, it's speculation more than anything. Yeah, right. And this is an opportunity that allows groups of people with a little bit more ambition and perhaps a little bit more application of their past life and their past knowledge to really add value.
Well, okay, so we skipped over this with the intro though. What you do is you're a consultant that helps people get into projects like this, right? That people don't know what they're doing. You help them navigate the permitting process, you help them navigate the construction process, even the capital raise process, right? Want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Energy retrofitting as well?
Yeah.
Too?
So financing seems to be the biggest missing puzzle piece. to this entire equation, financing. I hear it time and time again. The federal government, in an effort to combat the housing crisis that we're in right now, has come up with some pretty lucrative financing options and some creative financing solutions. However, there's strings attached to it. And a few of those strings are like, first of all, the government is trying to incentivize affordable housing and accessible housing and energy efficient housing. So I come in on the latter of those programs. So the government has stipulated that if I can build energy efficient housing, then they will reward us with financing. So what I do, Ken, is I do energy modeling, which is one of the 3 documents that's required to get funded by CMHC. So energy modeling is the practice of designing a house with energy efficiency in mind to try to be above national building code standards. So how I've been working with clients is doing energy modeling reports for their CMHC applications.
Like mine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the requirement is if you're above 5 units and if you meet or exceed certain energy codes as it pertains to the National Building Code, you're rewarded with some pretty lucrative financing options. So to date, our group has done about 400 applications, just shy of 400 applications for about $1.2 billion in CMHC financing deals. Amazing. Yeah, so for little, so this is like a small development, as you can imagine. This is actually the very small end of multifamily, 5 units. That's like the entry point. So we've done 200 unit towers and we've done the 4+1 models pretty extensively.
So first of all, the reason why the government wants energy modeling to be a big part of their program is because you're less reliant on utilities and energy, right? We're not spending as much gas, wasting electricity and all this kind of stuff that is really dependent on creating cities, right? Like everything's based on energy. So if we conserve it, that would help. Is that why, or is there a better explanation for why?
Listen, you nail on the head. Canada's a very climate conscious country, as you can imagine. They probably saw it as shooting themselves in the foot if they just created a ton of housing without taking into account greenhouse gas and fossil fuel. So the house that we're in right now uses no fossil fuels.
No gas.
No natural gas. So there's no fossil fuels that run this house. Heating and air conditioning is all electric. Our furnaces, our washer and dryer systems, all of our appliances are all electric. So the way that I say it to our partners is that we're future-proofing these developments for potentially a situation where Canada tries to disincentivise.
Well, carbon tax.
Sure, right.
And the reason why is because electricity in Ontario is clean. You know, like 85%, 90% clean, something like that. You have nuclear, 75% is nuclear.
Hydro.
And then we have hydroelectricity for the remaining part, and there's a bit of wind, bit of... Yeah, but for the most part, it's clean, right? You know this better than I do.
Yeah. And they want to incentivize going electric. There is a theory that this house could potentially be run on solar. We think we're building a better product. So tenant comfort is at the forefront of energy efficiency, whether you know it or not. There's 3 main things affected when you build with energy efficiency in mind. First is planet, we've talked about that. The second is the people, and then the third is profit, right? So if those 3 Ps are addressed, ultimately you should have a better product. And at the end of the day, when we're building purpose-built rentals, we're competing against the towers that are going up, 200-300 meters from here, right? Like there's a relatively big development there. So we always said that we wanted to be tenant-focused developers. Right. So what do we have to do? They have to be big, they have to be bright. People want to live in energy-efficient housing.
Right.
Right?
Cost less for them.
Cost less, higher comfort for the tenants. We think that we know our tenant class pretty well. We think that they are within a certain age bracket that is sensitive to living in energy efficient homes. Don't know if we'll be able to charge like a premium for that just yet. Time will tell. But and energy efficiency, in our opinion, addresses a few things. All the issues that I just talked about, but again, most importantly, it's unlocking this financing for us as well. So like the profit is really, really affected by building with energy efficiency at the forefront.
Okay, so we're at one of the smaller end of the commercial real estate. And the reason why 5 units is the smaller end is because that's where the definition of commercial is, right? Yeah. 5 units and up is considered commercial financing. And this program exists for commercial financing only, not residential. There's another one coming, but for the most part, this is the entry level to the commercial financing, right?
Correct, yeah. And so One of the reasons you're seeing the 4+1 model scale out across the city is so people can unlock commercial financing.
Right, because the city allowed 4 units as part of the EHON thing, a multiplex, small multiplex projects, and then they also allowed a garden suite, which is different but under the same umbrella. So technically it's 4 plus a lane suite or garden suite, so it makes it 5.
There's a bit of a disconnect on the municipality, the province, and the feds. And it's an interesting point that you're bringing up because we get that question a lot, like how do you build 5 units and avoid development charges? And development charges, as we all know, are these fees that the city puts on us every time we try to add in an additional suite. And you've heard horror stories of people getting digged with all 4 development charges when they try to build a 4+1, but there are some creative workarounds. Like for example, this house that we're in right now was originally designed as a triplex and the Laneway Suite in the rear. And we were able to get all 4 units as of rights. Once we close the permit, we reopen another permit, we phase in the 4th unit, we avoid development charges. And that allows us to access, again, the CMHC financing. So it's important to note CMHC financing does not require a building permit to make the application. They just need a design, an energy model, and a pro forma. And with those 3 documents, you can start the process of getting your certificate of insurance.
Okay, so let's talk about the thing that everyone's wondering. How much money is involved in here? And secondly, talk about the program, the MLI Select program, maybe. Just a high-level overview for people.
So I'll give you the macro number breakdown of this project. So we acquired the land at $1 million. I think it was like $1,005,000.
And that was like an old wartime bungalow.
Old wartime bungalow, built in the 50s. It was actually a really, really cool house. The original owner was in this house. The lot size was 24 by 175. Wow. Right? Yeah, and listen, it's a great neighborhood. I think it's worth mentioning the importance of transit orientation. We're 300 meters, if not less, from the subway station. The 24-hour streetcar line is just down the street from here, and then the beaches is about 500 meters from here. So location, in our opinion, was key.
And the GO train. GO train's over there too.
Oh, yeah, and the GO train station.
One stop into Union Station.
Store is like right there.
Groceries, yeah. So it's accessible. And I think if you are focused on removing parking to put in laneway suites or garden suites, laneway suites, try to make sure that you are acquiring a lot that addresses public transportation and amenities, right?
And certain width dimensions and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, and there's certain lot requirements. But back to your original question, the macro was we bought it for about $1 million, $1 million and change. The construction is nearing $2.2 million right now, so we're all in for about 3.2, 3.3, give or take, and it's been appraised at $4.3 million once complete. So our as-if complete valuation is 4.3.
perfect. And if somebody were to do this from scratch, what's the cash involved?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of people trying to get into the 4+1 space are asking minimum required equity. CMHC just amended one of their rules and changed a rule again that they will only advance 75% of your construction costs until your project has been stabilized. Then they'll release the remaining 20. So what I tell people is of that 3.2, make sure you have at least 25%.
Stabilized meaning permits closed? Or
No, tenants in here.
Tenants, okay.
Tenants in
so
here.
rent stabilized, yeah.
Yeah, rent stabilized. So for a project like this, 800,000.
Okay, cash.
$800,000 cash.
And if you own the land, say it's your parents' lot or something, or you've owned it for a very long time, then a lot less, because you won't have the land acquisition part of it, right?
You don't have the land acquisition part, and you can use and rely on the equity that you have in your...
To refinance, to take some money out for the construction, and then tack on
absolutely.
CMHC on top of that.
Yeah. So I mean, the people that are doing this successfully are people that have a lot of equity in homes, like you said, that were either passed on to them from parents or another generation, or people that have cash, or people that are working with like a group of people and they understand the minimum required equity. I will be the first to tell you that this is, what we're standing in right now is the blueprint of R4+1, and there was cost overruns everywhere.
As always.
Hopefully
you budgeted for it.
I'll share. Well, it's funny because CMHC has to do progress draws, and they'll send a quantity surveyor out, and some of the times they're like, well, what the heck's going on? Why are you guys so over? So I can share some war stories with you about us putting our electrical meters inside. There was recently a regulation change that now allows them to be outside, so that saves tons of money and tons of space, usable space we could be renting. Our exterior walls have like a rigid board that hit a certain R value of, I think we're like an R30 in the walls right now. We didn't need to do that. We didn't need that. That was like a $30,000 cost overrun. So there's been a lot of efficiencies in the construction process, 100%, that I'd love to share. And I think financially engineering these things a little bit more conservatively has proven to be a good exercise. A really good exercise, because the last thing you want to have happen is not being able to pay your trades because you don't have required equity. Keep in mind, CMHC construction financing has so many different nuances, and there's usually about a 7 to 14 day lag from when you make your application to when you get your funds. So you want some working capital.
And then I guess the other part is the MLI Select program. So, where everybody's heard about it, 95% loan to value. Not saying to do that, not saying you'll be approved for that either. But the very best case, 95% loan to value, meaning 5% down. When you take out all your money, after you put the, refinance everything, you can leave 5% into it. And then on top of that, it could be up to a 50-year amortization, right? So not everyone qualifies for that, of course, because that's all debt coverage. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk about that.
Sure.
At a high level.
So it's the MLI Select, if you're familiar with the program, it's a CMHC product that is designed to, again, offer creative financing with terms as high as a 50-year amortization, a 1.1 DSCR, interest rates right now
debt
are
service
like
coverage ratio.
Debt service coverage
Meaning
ratio.
that if you bring in, if it costs you $100 to run the place, including mortgage, then you have to bring in $110.
Correct. So typical financing, to compare them, is usually like a 1.2 to 1.25, right? So it's a material impact. So by reducing your DSCR, you can increase your loan amount. Now the amortization period, just to simplify it, essentially means that your monthly carrying costs are almost cut in half when you compare it to like a 25-year amortization, which is typically like what you would have on a single family home. Like my first house, I went to RBC, I got a 25-year AM, I had my interest rates, whatever. You're kind of limited. If that's the only product that you have to have financing or have your mortgage through, you're really, really limited to your monthly carrying costs. Like you need to cover them. With a longer amortization period, a lower DSCR, and a lower interest rate that's offered through the MLI Select, that's really what makes these projects fly financially.
Yeah, and because it's a brand new product, right? Based on the score that you get, you would have a longer economic life for the property. So you could amortize this over 50 years. And it would still be relevant in 50 years, right? Versus like just a resale house that might only have 10 years left. And you have to do
especially if you're planning on future-proofing it right from the get-go. I mean, that really...
Yeah, all of that, right? So brand new construction obviously is going to last longer, so they can do 50-year amortizations, right?
The MLI Select is the reason that you are seeing the 4+1s in the city of Toronto.
Plus zoning. Plus
zoning. But like margins are they're not huge. Right, so with conventional financing, this wouldn't work.
Right.
The land costs are too high and the construction costs are just simply too high. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't work. So the MLI Select, the CMHC product, for those that don't know, or people like your viewers that aren't familiar with the product, incentivizes sustainability, affordability, and energy efficiency. And I know that we touched on that briefly.
Accessibility too, right?
Yeah, and accessibility, yeah. We touched on that briefly. This home that we're standing in right now is 100 points in the MLI Select. We went full energy efficiency to get the points because we thought that the underwriting might be a little harmed with affordability in the city of Toronto, just given the neighborhood that we're in. What does that mean? It means that we built with high efficiency heating and air conditioning systems, domestic hot water systems, LED lighting, building envelope, which is kind of what we can get into here on our little property tour.
All right, so let's get a little detailed and do the tour.
Yeah, sure. So again, we're just in the midst of putting our finishings in right now. What you see here is an HRV. So a lot of new homes are built with air tightness top of mind. It's how we're getting the highest points in the MLI Select program right now. In fact, this home, in comparison to like our more recent projects, we have really buttoned up our air changeover per hour. We've lowered that number and we've really tightened up the air tightness of the building. And you'll see all new construction in Canada really, really focusing on that.
What do you got for air tightness rating right now?
I believe this is 1.1. 1.1, which is like really, really tight. We're seeing some models get below 1. We lose some of it because we have this shared hallway right here. But, you know, it essentially means that you need to be ventilating this space. It's really, really comfort focus. Like, you're not going to have like hot areas or cold areas in the you know, depths of the summer, or like the hot days, the depths of the summer and the hot days, winter, summer. But HRV, this is our HRV system, which is designed to heat and cool down outside air before you bring it in for ventilation purposes. This is where our heating, or washer and dryer are going to go. It's all electric. It's all energy efficient. This is our little island system.
Is it ductless too?
Yeah,
It's
all ductless.
Okay. So HRV stands for heat recovery ventilator, by the way, which is a little different than ERV because it retains moisture.
ERV, ERV is the moisture one.
Moisture one, okay.
Yeah, so like typically you'll see an ERV in more of the southern states, but with the weather zone that Toronto's hitting nowadays, you're probably going to see more ERVs because of how humid it gets in the summer. And last year, I think we had, 3 days where it dropped below 5 degrees in 2023. So like Toronto is feeling the effects of a warming climate. Air handler. So air source heat pumps is how this unit is heated and cooled. So there's no natural gas used for furnace. The way that an air source heat pump system works, the easiest way to explain this is it pulls heat from the outside air up to -30. So this is where this system goes right here.
If you want to see a great video, I'm just going to plug our video, but the Passive House video that we did, we'll link to that here, but that was good. Ray took us through the whole process of all his engineering concepts because he went fanatical about that.
Yeah, that was a net zero house, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so this is not a net zero house.
But it's close to it.
It's close to it. Net zero houses are, to your point, like really, really overboard.
Yeah.
Right?
And the cost is overboard too, right? So
The cost
a lot more.
The cost is overboard.
He says 20% more than a traditional new build, but I think it's more than that. I think it's probably 30%.
Well, I mean, like, to be fully transparent, like, we're almost 10% over our budget to date because of some of the energy efficiency measures that we had to install. And again, now that we're, on our 3rd, 4th, and 5th project down the street, we found ways to maximize the energy efficiency and really keep the construction budget in line. So like, there's some things that we probably won't do again. For example, our air source heat pump is a 17 SEER. We're now getting away with being able to hit the full point in the MLI Select with like a 14.5. And it's a material impact, right? Like, it's taken our HVAC line from like 120 down to like 75.
Oh, that's a big difference.
They're smaller.
Times 4 though, right? Or 5?
No.
For one.
That's for the entirety of the 5 units. But it's a big difference. Building envelope, our cost has gone from 80,000 down to 50,000, right? So there's some efficiencies that we're gaining by virtue of our experience, which is nice. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I like to always note how quiet this room is. So again,
Actually, it really is.
It's really, really quiet. Given the fact that it's on a main street.
We were outside. We couldn't even film outside because of how loud it was.
Yeah. So we got the rush hour here. Yeah, it's quiet. High Energy Star rated windows. Building envelope here is an R30. Building envelope here is an R30. Important to note that all new construction in the city of Toronto has to be non-combustible. And I think it's probably, because of how close you are to neighboring property. So this is an infill project. And you have to adhere to Part 9 of the Ontario Building Code.
So tell me the non-combustible, like what is combustible, right? So what do you mean?
Yeah, so non-combustible means that it will not light on fire. It's not fire rated, like it's non-combustible. So we have an exterior boarding that will not catch fire. I believe it's a 3M product.
Okay.
Costs us an arm and a leg, but it's one of the stipulations of when you build new construction. So what we're in right now is a brand new build from the ground up. I see a lot of applications and I'm working on a lot of projects that will keep the existing frame of a building because they want to grandfather some of their building materials, setbacks, window allowances. So there's a lot of benefits when you can actually retain as much of the existing building as possible in some cases.
Carry on.
You can use spray foam. Spray foam is another really good example because it's cheap and it's effective. There's no spray foam that we're allowed to use in our above grade walls because all of our above grade walls are new construction. So there's steel wall assemblies, it's batt insulation. In addition to that, we have that rigid board construction outside as part of the wall assembly. It ultimately results in very, very expensive building envelope. And it's necessary in some cases, but there's a way to overdo it. And I think that the product that we're in right now has overdone it personally. So, but I mean, like the benefits, we talked about tenant comfort and we talked about like building a really, really good product. We're in the master bedroom right now. And the master bedroom is designed to be really, really quiet. It's big and it's bright and it's beautiful. We have a beautiful walk-in closet here and then a 3-piece bath. So, you know, we're aware of some pretty big developers building down the street. And we've always reminded ourselves that we're probably going to have to compete with them when it's all said and done, right?
For tenants.
For tenants, for sure, right? So how does this product stack up to a condo building?
Well, when you do price it, are you going to price it under what a condo, brand new condo would lease for?
We're going to try to match the pro forma that we had to submit to CMHC, which is, you know, in between $3.85 a square foot to about $4.50 a square foot.
Oh wow, $450. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, brand new construction. So if I was a tenant, I would pick a brand new house and pay the premium versus you know, old school rad house with like leaky air and you know what I mean. Like it makes a big difference.
It's new construction, right? So
it's
there's warranties on everything. It's ground oriented. People love the fact that they don't have to get in an elevator and you know, share hallways with people. And like the whole crux or the whole premise of missing middle housing is supposed to have gentle integration into the community. So like they like living in the upper beaches. They love the little shops and the cafes that are right there. So we think that the people that we're going to be competing against are these bigger developers that are like building these 400 unit towers on the other side of Vic Park, you know, with this particular project. So we've always said, okay, they got to be big, they got to be bright. The original house we had to excavate and put in a rear addition, but these units are 1,100 square feet.
Yeah. Okay. And really high ceilings too.
Yeah, high ceilings for you know, typically what you'd see in Toronto. The layout is really nice. This is the second bedroom, again, spacious, big closet. The whole house is going to be run on LED lights, which I think is fairly standard. I feel like we've been in the age of LEDs for at least the last decade.
Yeah.
But it's important to note that it's all energy efficient lighting.
Yeah. It's getting harder and harder to find CFL tubes that
You can't find CFLs. It's funny, I think incandescent light bulbs are now like the most expensive light bulbs because people want like the old big bath. I believe his and her sink. No, it's his and her sink in the master, which is really nice. Mechanical penthouse, and then third bedroom. It's got a really, really nice view of the CN Tower.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, it's a cloudy day today. You can't see it, but
No.
yeah. No, I normally you could.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, we are in a residential neighborhood. Did you have to go to committee of adjustment to get the house this high?
We did for this one, but we were kind of like the trailblazers in the space on this one. All of our other projects, no.
Oh, okay. You still managed to fit like 4+1s in the same.
All of them without.
Nice.
I think that if you find yourself going to committee of adjustments, in my humble opinion, you're missing the forest for the trees. If you're going to try to do this at scale, or if you're trying to make like a business out of this, the name of the game is buy, submit for permit immediately, and try to be building within like 6 to 12 months. That would be ideal. Get all of your planning and everything done, submit for permit, avoid committee of adjustments, avoid any kind of like interfacing with the neighbors if you could.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
That just adds to potential delays.
This one, like, I mean, if we want to talk about some war stories, like this one had huge delays. This was a 12-month wait to permit process, and we did have to lock horns with the neighbors. I think that the requests were all really reasonable. It's not, neighbors are not, I mean, not to villainize them, like they're not really being that difficult. Like some of their concerns were valid concerns. Like if I had lived next door and
Mostly
I had young
noise.
kids, noise, shadowing, privacy seems to be the big one. Tenant class seems to be a big one. So like I think it's important to highlight, like we sat down with the neighbors in a very diplomatic fashion, and they were very, very civil. And we said, listen, we're trying to build high-end purpose-built rentals. Historically, what has been here? What is the tenant class that's been here? What have your concerns been with the tenants that have lived in these houses here? And they were very transparent about what they didn't want in here. And we said, listen, this is what we think that they're going to rent for. This is what we think that these units are going to rent for. And these are the tenants that we exclusively rent to, which are younger millennials, professional working class, young couples, typically no kids, right? And they move every 2 or 3 years. Like that is our ideal tenant. They're professionals, they work downtown, they have a reputation to uphold, right? So we try to address their concerns, let them know our intentions, what we're trying to do, and hopefully come up with like an amicable move forward. And we were able to do that here. Yeah.
So speaking of the business side of it, so you want to get in, get out, not have to do COA because it takes 8 to 10 months to wait for a hearing. If you get in and out, get out from closing to occupancy, how long would that process in an ideal world take for you for the next project?
Yeah, so in an ideal world, I think that if you can do it in 24 months, you're a rock star. I think if you can acquire, permit, start construction, and have it done in 24 months, you're a rock star. That's my opinion. Now, there's some nuances to my answer, and that being that we build with CMHC construction financing.
Yes, that takes longer too, right?
So there's some delays.
That alone could take 5, 6, 8 months, right?
It can, yeah. So let's just say it takes 6 months. The balancing act that we've always tried to have internally is the wait worth the squeeze? Like, is this added delay in construction worth it? And ultimately, we found that it is. The exit is always going to be with CMHC. Right? So you're going to have to pay these CMHC insurance premiums at some point, right? So somebody's like, well, we'll speed your construction along. There's some minor costs that are saved there, but ultimately when they're charging you prime plus 4 plus a lender's fee, it's a substantial difference when we're getting about 6.5% on our construction loan. There are headaches and there are strings attached. I want to be very, very clear about that. But again, if you were to run into a hiccup in the 11th hour, if hydro doesn't come and connect, because you have to upgrade your amperage for these kind of projects, if there is any form of delay, the interest rates ticking when you're at your maximum loan amount at the end of the project can be the difference between being a profitable project or non-profitable project. So we think that it's worth it to go MLI Select construction financing. We've kind of like rung it through our like financial modeling, and that's the decision that we've made.
Okay. So, but if you're doing conventional financing, then you could do it a lot quicker, is what you're saying.
I think so.
Most likely.
Yeah.
I think so too, right?
Yeah.
It's just building a regular house with permits at the end of the day.
I got a lot of clients that can do that like immediately. They buy a house and they're gutting the inside before they even like. There's also something to be said about doing it privately. Like if you're doing it for yourself, you have a lot less red tape and people to answer to versus if you're raising capital and bringing on partners, you have a little bit more accountability and transparency to them. And everything has to be above code.
Right. Okay, so if you do it privately, conventional, whatever, and then do MLI Select for the takeout financing, that also works as well too, right?
Absolutely.
So once you refinance everything. So I guess I want to gear towards people that are thinking of buying, they want to invest in real estate, but they don't know how. They don't want to buy another condo because condos don't make sense anymore. Or they don't want to buy a house because, I don't know, maybe again, the numbers don't make sense and you want to maximize it. Let's walk through a model of that, right?
Sure.
So somebody acquires land, so say $1 million, $1.2 million maybe, they got to put 20% down, let's call it?
Yeah, so I mean, we were buying the land in cash, but I have seen another model work. So let's say it's 20% down on $1 million piece of land. Yeah. Okay, you'd have to incur some soft costs. So your soft costs are going to be your architects getting ready for permit submission, and energy modeling reports. Mm-hmm. So it's probably going to cost you between like $50,000 and $75,000 to get up into the point that you can submit for permit. So you're going to need that capital on hand. First of all, the $200,000 to make the first acquisition, the $75,000 for your soft costs. If you want to go conventional construction financing, I would imagine that a lender may want to be first in line, so there's going to be some cost there, some fees, I'm sure, that you're going to have to pay upfront to get access to that money. But I would still caution anybody doing projects like this to use the minimum equity. Like I would caution against that, right? In my humble opinion, when you read about the MLI Select, you hear about these like incredibly attractive financing terms, 5% down, 95% loan to cost, 95% loan to value. In the city of Toronto, it rarely shakes out to be those numbers.
Yeah, you have that much more margin of error. Like if you have that little margin of error, I should say. If you make a mistake, your cost over and you don't have any more money in the bank account, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Right?
And like, let's just say that something happens with a tenant and the tenant doesn't pay, or if you lose a tenant, there's vacancy. This is 20% of your pro forma is hinged on this unit alone. So it's you're not building a 20 unit or a 50 unit where you can kind of like, blend some of the numbers. It's a lot more sensitive. So the way that we structured this one, I believe, was about 75% loan to value when it was all said and done.
Okay.
Yeah, 75% loan
Including
to value.
construction.
Including
like
construction.
the end unit and final appraised value.
The final appraised value.
good.
I believe we valued it at a 4.25 cap. It was appraised, I think I mentioned $4.4 million. So like we created about $1 million in equity, and it sounds great on paper, but in real estate you can't eat equity, right? So we structured it so that our debt was being serviced responsibly, and we accounted for vacancy, of course, but we didn't want to find ourselves in a situation where we had to do a cash call or put more money in, or heavens forbid, weren't making mortgage payments.
Yeah, that's right. So you're talking about putting what, like $1.5 million down cash?
We came in with 1.2 for this project.
1.2, and then you're going to take out $1 million of equity out
On the back end?
in 2 years.
Yeah.
So you're basically almost doubling your money in 2 years,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
And you're doing it in Toronto real estate, right? Like a question that I always get is like, why Toronto? Why Toronto? Why don't you take these skills to to Sudbury, where land is a fraction of the cost, or Sault Ste. Marie? And I always answer back with like, first of all, I believe that real estate should be localized. I can drive my bicycle to all of our developments, right? So there's something to be said about keeping our thumb on the pulse there. Second, Toronto is a world-class city. This is my opinion, that Toronto is a blue chip stock that you want to own in real estate. If things go wrong, we're here. We're localized owners, we're localized property managers and construction managers. It's tough to manage projects outside of your peripheral. With all the major factors and indicators that Toronto has going for it, I believe that Toronto, and I try not to speculate with real estate, but I believe that Toronto in 10 years from now will be worth more than what it is currently today.
I mean, you don't need to speculate that. I think for sure it's going to be.
So
I think it will be anyway.
Yeah, I hope. I hope. I think if given the option, like if I had something like this, brand new construction multiplex, I would want it in the city of Toronto. The reason why it has not worked is because financing didn't make it work, construction costs and land. In comes this government product, in comes this government intervention that has eliminated development charges and removed some of the red tape, and then gave us these financing options, and voila. We now have cash flowing multifamily new construction in the city of Toronto. And this is from a guy, like, I didn't grow up with a tool belt on. I don't know if you can pick up on that, but like, I didn't grow up in my dad's, F-150. The point is that, if you're able to take some wherewithal about construction or team up with a really, really good team, you can make this work and it cash flows. We're not getting rich off one, but if you're able to build a number of them, they cash flow well. And it's a blue chip stock in the city of Toronto.
With unlimited demand, right?
With unlimited demand. Well, I hope.
Plus unlimited demand.
Yeah, but I hope, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a leading city, and if you're going to move to Canada, like, where are you going to go? You're going to a financial
go to
center
Toronto.
where all the jobs are, right? So where the transit is, where everything is.
Where the amenities are, the existing infrastructure that's already built.
Sure. Yeah. But like I loved the idea of real estate investing. And I think I told you my first story was buying pre-con condos in 2014. And I'm like, oh my God, look how much, this is so easy. Just keep investing in Toronto, right? But somewhere between 2014 and I'm going to say 2017 or 18, it stopped making sense. The rents were not covering the debt, and they still were selling out like hotcakes. I watched all these pre-con condos with lineups outside of them in 2017, 18, 19. And I'm like, how is this making sense? How are people buying condos that are money pits? Yeah. Well, it's because you're buying in the city of Toronto.
Well, it's also the equity was growing, right? Your mortgage is paying down,
Sure.
so that was the way to justify it now. But now all those 2018 condos are coming up for completion, and the appraisal values are falling short, which is a huge issue right now.
Yeah, and like to your point earlier, like what can you really do to add value to a condo? just sit on your hands and wait for time to pass, right?
But I mean, it's a good and bad thing for different investors, right? Like with all this, there's a lot of things you got to put together, right?
Yeah.
And thankfully, we have you as a guide to be able to show people how to do this. But for most part, like buying a condo, it's simple, and if you want to get out of it, it's relatively simple to get out of it, right? Which is good. Here, what's an exit strategy that you find?
So the exit strategy is the refinance through CMHC.
Yeah, because you get cheap debt.
Cheap debt.
1% above Canada mortgage bond.
Long amortization period, right? There is a tremendous amount of our mortgage payment that is principal pay down. So your actual return on equity is hitting double digits in your first year. Your cash on cash returns are almost double digit. But to your original question, for the investor that loves this missing middle space, clearly sees the value in it, find a really, really good company, because there are great developers out there that are bringing in limited partners. So there's still an opportunity for money to get in on these deals without having to put on the tool belt or the hard hat and actually build these things, right? Because it's not for the faint of heart. This is not light construction. This is like,
sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, it's like pretty complex development. Like this is sophisticated development.
Well, you're building a house, right? So a little more than building a house. I don't know if anybody caught the GPLP thing. So the limited partner he's talking about, where people just come in with money, as opposed to, I guess, control of the project, where a general partner would typically do that. So there's different structures you can do, but the simplest one is a general partner and limited partner, where people just bring in money and then you do all the work to make this all happen.
Yeah, so I know that when you and I were on the phone, we're like, well, like, who is the missing middle for? Who is this 4+1 for? And our first answer was people that have land. People that either were given a house or have a ton of equity, or they bought in like 2013 and they have all this equity in this house and they're sitting on an ideal lot. Absolutely explore it. It's a great way to bring your land to a very high and its best value, in my personal opinion. Whether that's to have your kids live rent-free or to subsidize some of like your own mortgage payments, great opportunity. The second opportunity is for passive investors, people that invested in pre-con condos that want to lean on the expertise of a good general partner with experience that's done it before, and they can participate as an investor kind of on the sidelines. So they don't have any liability as far as the debt is concerned. They're not on mortgage, so it doesn't affect their credit, and they don't need to learn how to build a house, before this program eventually dries up.
Something I gotta ask a lawyer, is this considered commercial when you sell it, when it's completely built? Like, in other words, would it fall under the non-resident tax stuff? Like, are non-residents allowed to buy it? Because non-residents right now are not allowed to buy residential properties, but they can buy commercial properties.
That's a really good question.
Are they able to buy this type of house once it's complete?
I can be an echo chamber for answers that I've heard. I've heard that they can, because it's considered commercial.
Right.
But I don't know from experience.
Yeah.
I don't know from experience. In fairness, and I mean, this is another thing you and I were talking about, I don't know of too many of these that have transacted in Toronto.
Once it's complete, like transacted as in sold to somebody else.
As in sold.
But maybe you don't need to, because you pretty much got your money back from the refi and it's just paying itself off. So why would you ever sell it, right?
Well, you wouldn't, but I get this question all the time from investors, from partners, that people want us to manage their money. They're like, well, what's the exit strategy? When are we selling? And to understand why we're doing this, we're not building these to sell, right? Like, land is very, very hard to acquire in Toronto. Building this was not much easier. The last thing we want to do once this is all said and done is turn over a newly constructed 5-plex that has, the warranty sticker still on the windows to somebody else, right? Like, ever since 2018, new construction is not even bound by rent control. So like, we want to hold this asset. It's supposed to be a legacy piece, a legacy asset that you hold on to. So to answer your question, or what I tell our partners, is the exit is the CMHC, the refinancing. We try to return capital upon stabilization, and then you hold for rent, right? You hold for rent, and if you're lucky, you can refinance large chunks of money every 5 years, right? Every 5 years, you should be able to take out very, very attractive chunks of money that make the investment kind of work.
Well, as the property value increases, and at the same time, because rents increase as well, right?
Let's hope so. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's hope.
Yeah.
Or I guess the wild dream would be to have a portfolio of this stuff, right, and sell it to a fund or something.
I think so. Yeah. We've been approached by like an institutional buyer, and I think that is the other exit strategy. If you can build a portfolio of, let's say, 50 units, that's all ground-oriented, purpose-built rentals, non-rent control, still warranties on all the like building materials, in good neighborhoods, I think that there's a market to sell your entire portfolio of like 10 of them, right? So as a limited partner, you'd really benefit from that transaction.
And actually, on top of that, not only are you getting the actual asset itself and all that, you get the knowledge on how to do this. And if you know how to do a 4+1, a 5 unit, what's to stop you from doing a 200 unit?
Yeah.
Right? Like realistically, I know it's money, obviously, in scale, but like eventually you can go to a 50 unit, 20 unit, whatever, right?
Well,
and yeah, there's DCs involved, sure. And there's a little more
I agree with
approvals,
you.
But essentially, it's the same formula.
We've romanticized the idea of once this is all said and done, going to a major streets.
Yeah, exactly. Major Streets is coming too, right?
Yeah,
With 11 stories.
So,
As of right, 60 units.
Carve your teeth on stuff like this. Learn your fire separations. Learn your vertical stacked plumbing. Learn all the nuances of infill City of Toronto development, because it is very, niche in the sense that it's not big green land developments where you can have prefab construction stuff. Like, building sciences have come a long way, and I think that was one of the things we wanted to talk about is like, what to look out for. Prefab construction does not really work in these infill projects. So if you're able to earn your stripes on projects like this, when major streets come, I think in like a 5-year window from now, we transition to bigger developments and hopefully have some experience and expertise and can bring that with us. So
Yeah, and then after that, apartment buildings is coming as well too, right? Like that's going to be as of right as well too soon.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a lot tougher to jump into that with 2 feet, right? Without this kind of experience.
Of course.
Yeah.
And actually, I always want to step back a little bit about the prefab stuff. I actually, traditionally, yes, prefab is not good for these types of housing because it's pretty dense and it's hard to get the area to bring in the cranes and bring up these panels and stuff like that. But I think it is coming because actually I do have a site for sale right now and a lot of people are approaching for prefab work. So
Yeah, no, I believe it's coming. I just, we were talking about this the other day, and our projects are they're a little bit more complex, and each building seems to be somewhat different. And the infill element of these projects presents a challenge. But for Laneway Suite, and I want to show you the Laneway Suite, I think prefab is the way of the future.
For sure.
With all the advances that are coming with regular building materials and building sciences like heating and cooling system, domestic hot water, the last is going to be prefab. So
We're taking the fire pole down?
yeah.
Nice. Oh no, we're not. Okay, I thought we were actually going to go down the...
Oh, you were being serious. I don't know if I'd ever walk down that. I watched these guys working on it today, and I'm like, not a chance.
Can you imagine doing that in an emergency?
Well,
Yeah, right? Well, I said, I'm like, does anyone feel comfortable working on this?
Like you got your dog and your cat, you're trying to run away from a fire.
Can you imagine? That is a mammoth of a Laneway Suite.
That's huge.
1,500 square feet, 3-bed, 3-bath. We actually, a very, very cool story that I'd love to find a way to tell. Maybe you can help me. We have a tenant in there.
Already?
Not currently living in there,
I was about to say.
but we have a tenant for that unit.
Oh, those are easy to find tenants for.
What's cool is it was an investor in the project. So it was a limited partner that put a chunk of money down. He's now going to get the majority of that money back once it's stabilized, and he's going to live there and have his rent subsidized by the other tenants in here.
Yeah, that's great.
So typically, I mean, if you look at like people that are investing in pre-con condos, you put a big chunk of money down, then you have to put more down and more down and more down and carrying cost. This individual put money down, got it back, owns this, now has equity in it, and is going to be having his rent subsidized by the other 4 renters, which I think is a really, really cool story.
I mean, essentially it's a detached structure. So this works amazing for a landowner that still wants their own home, but wants to retire or doesn't want their living costs covered, right? I mean, they want to cover from the tenants. So you have 3 or 4 tenants really, and then yourself living in there,
Yeah.
a detached structure.
You see it all the time. That is, I mean, like in my humble opinion, going to be like the nicest unit, I think.
Of course it is. Yeah.
It's your separate entrance, it's 2 stories, like 1,500 square feet. I've never lived in a 1,500 square foot home in Toronto. Right? Like look at the size of this thing.
You will soon, I'm sure.
Yeah,
After
well,
a few of these
yeah,
more.
yeah, one day.
The largest I think you can get is what, 1,900 or 1,600, 1,700? I forgot.
That's a good question.
There is a maximum. I think it was 9. I forgot off the top of my head, just based on the dimensions of what they allow.
Yeah.
But I saw a 4-bedroom, and it was beautiful, with a parking pad in the front, 2-car parking pad in the front.
We have 2-car parking too.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Because like this neighborhood, I think is still somewhat leaning on the need of a car. I think so. I think that you need a car in this neighborhood. Like, could you get away with it? Sure. We've had students in here before we did the reno. Like these are the wartime bungalows that you were talking about earlier. Before we did the reno, we had students in here and they made it by without a car. Yeah, look how sweet these houses are for development. In an ideal world, you'd have all 4 of them beside each other. Major streets, it's funny, every property or every project that we've done to date is on a major street.
Is this considered major street, Gerard?
It's Gerard, yeah.
It will be, or
I think
is?
so. I think so.
Oh, I don't know. I've been trying to find that map. Like they have a map, but you can't really zoom in to see.
Really?
I think, yeah, but that's coming. So just so you don't, just in case you were wondering, major streets is City of Toronto, because they say this is not, like they still need more density, in other words. So why can't we have like, we have an 11-story building over there or something, or I don't know, over there, right? So why can't we on a major street have that, right? With major arteries in the city. So now it's coming soon through council, I think, where they're going to do as of rights. Actually, already passed 60 units and 6 stories as of right, but they're trying to push it to 11 stories now.
11, yeah. I mean, that certainly opens up a lot of opportunities.
Still, you have to go through building permits. Still, you have to do fire separations, fire code, and all that, like sprinklers and all that. But like, why not?
Well, it's funny that you highlight that sprinkler system. We've been able to get away with not putting sprinkler systems in here.
How's that?
Oh, it's great from a cost standpoint.
No, I get that, but like, because it's 4 stories, right? I'm just thinking about that. You're right. Because by Ontario Building Code, normally you would need a sprinkler after 4 stories.
I believe it's because it was originally designed as a 3-unit, but I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. Yeah. What I do know is we studied some other like blueprints before we started construction. There's a project that's happening down the street, and one of the first things that we noticed when we were walking through was the sprinkler system. And like, those are expensive. Those are really, really expensive. So we worked with our architect. Like, I can't stress enough the importance of having a good team. It's one thing that I say over and over again, but a good architect, a good lawyer, great engineers. You need a CMHC approved lender. You need somebody that knows their way around the finances, and then you need a construction partner. But with that,
and a good realtor.
And you need a good realtor and an advisor. Yeah, there you go. Well,
advisor.
We talked about that though, right? Like, we don't have a realtor on our team. Like, I don't know
we're the realtor.
I don't know if anybody has really mastered like this whole, what is the criteria for an ideal lot size, right? Because I get called all the time, and that's their starting point. And I'm sitting there and I'm just confused. I'm like, how is nobody capturing these people and saying, this is how you do it, this is how you do it? So you're right, to your point, like that is the first piece of this blueprint.
I mean, I think the biggest part is lot size though, right? You probably need a 20 by 120 or so minimum, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's actually the thing that we talk about in our like guide is a 20 by 120 is a minimum.
Minimum, yeah. And then because, I mean, the rules are changing where the distance between the houses is shrinking. Now you don't have to do the angular planes and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. But like traditionally, yeah, you needed that for all those elements, right? The space in between the houses and the angular
space between houses, setbacks, fire access.
Right, all that.
Trees. We've run into some trouble with trees. I've even seen, like, I'm a member of some of these online ecosystems where everybody kind of exchanges war stories, and I've seen permits disappear. Well, permits not be issued on account of trees, right? People have gone out and bought homes, think that they're going to be able to do this, and they have to give like a 3-meter setback or a 6-meter setback from a tree, and it crushes the whole project. So.
Yeah, I mean, and if you don't do the 5-unit, you could still do it with a residential financing, right? With less than 5 units, 4 units or less even. Right, because there's that new thing coming on January 15th where you can do CMHC financing on residential lots for multiplexes.
Yeah, I don't know that program intimately, but I have read about that. Yeah, sure, you can make that work, right? Like, I deal with like a lot of clients that are self-funded. They don't have partners' money, and they have this incredible, like, you can make it work. You can make it work. It's not our business model per se, but yeah, you can certainly make it work.
All right, so let's leave a little plug for you. I mean, your module that you're selling, online course. Yeah, well, so like, look, if you've listened to me talk, you probably know that I don't know everything, right? Like, it's very important to highlight the importance of our team, right? But you've done it, and I mean, you're doing it, so you do have experience, and you know what you're doing. Yeah, I bring the energy advisory to the table. I bring like the energy modeling and the wherewithal to build with energy efficiency top of mind, and we've been able to like kill it in the CMHC space for other clients. We put together a booklet, and it came by virtue of banks and lenders asking us for more information. So we kept giving all these clients energy modeling reports and providing them to go out into the world and go get financing on their deals. They would ultimately come back to us and say, they're not approving us because we don't have a construction budget that's approved and we don't have a pro forma.
So we started putting together this document that provided the exact blueprint for what we built here and on our other 4+1s. Everything from construction practices, contracts that you need with your contractor, energy model outlines, CMHC approved construction budgets, CMHC approved pro formas, appraisal documents, the CMHC process, the financing process, and we've kind of given it to our clients. So it seems to be how we're helping the majority of our clients right now, but we also like to partner on really, really good plots of land. And that could look like us bringing capital to the table, raising money for other projects, or taking a project from start to finish and actually doing the construction of it as well.
So meaning that if you owned a piece of land or you want to get involved in something like this, Jayden would be able to walk you through the process from A to Z, or if you want to learn how to do it yourself, he's got a guide.
Yeah.
Really, and I'll link to the description for that, but yeah, thanks for the tour. You guys have any questions? All right.
I'd love to have you guys back once it's
wait to see
built.
it, yeah.
And this tarping is coming off the Laneway Suite now. So yeah, it should be ready by spring. I think by March we should have everybody back here and we can kind of tour the property before we get tenants in here.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Let's do it.
Good work.
We'll do a video shoot.
Yeah, and I'll show you some of the other projects too. Like we have one on Jones right now that's like, we kept all of the existing walls, we just ripped the roof off. So I did a property tour there like 2-3 weeks ago, and it's really, really cool because we raised the floor. We didn't underpin it. So everybody is sitting on these like old 1950s wooden beams, like it's the original floor, but it's been raised and it's all brick all the way up with no roof. And we had like a flat screen TV there. We had like 50 people there. It was like a really, really cool backdrop.
That's cool.
For like an info session, yeah.
That's cool.
And I can't
That's
wait
historic.
to see.
Feels like a distillery, you know? Like
Yeah,
when
yeah.
we build
It
on top
is,
of the
it
heritage.
is. The brick and beam,
Yeah.
the brick and beam look, yeah.
It saves on new construction costs on renovations instead. So cool, man. Thanks for the time.
Thank
and
you
thanks
guys for
the tour.
coming. I appreciate you guys trekking across the city.
We're just down the street, so we're not too far.
Yeah.
Add it up.
Thanks for sticking out to the very end. I hope you got some value out of this. Do me a favor, please press like and subscribe, but more than anything, leave me some feedback so we know what to produce for you going forward. Thanks again.